Hi friends, welcome to this video. Today I wanted to share some of the best books that I've read since the beginning of the year. I know that a lot of people are still in quarantine, stuck at home, and maybe running out of things to keep them entertained. So if you're someone that is looking for some reading material but you're not really sure what to pick up, maybe this list could be helpful. On average, I usually read about one book a month, but because of quarantine, I've been blowing through books. I think I've read like 14 or 15 since January, and I'm in the middle of 2 more right now. And I don't really stick to any particular genre of reading material. It's usually just whatever's available at the library or something that's been recommended to me either by a friend or YouTube or Goodreads. I definitely do prefer fiction though, so all of the books that I talk about today except one are fiction. Side note, if you can hear the lawnmower outside of my house, I am very sorry. I can't do anything about that. So one cool thing that I learned about in quarantine is there's this app called Libby. And the way it works is you download it to your phone, and then if you have a library card, you link your library card to the Libby app, and then you can see all the digital downloads that your local library has on file. And you can either read these books on your phone, or if you have a Kindle, I have a Kindle, I just have it sent straight to the Kindle, which is super convenient. So a lot of what I've been reading right now has kind of just been whatever's available at the library through this app. And I have noticed that a lot more people are checking out books. I'm on hold for like 8 right now at my local library, and for each book that I'm waiting on, I think there's like at least 50 to 100 more people waiting for that same copy. I think the thing that upset me the most about quarantine in the beginning was losing the library, and so I'm really happy that there's an alternative to that. So I don't want to have any spoilers in this video, and I don't want to go too in-depth into each plot because I feel like that's just something you can Google on your own. I mostly just want to talk about why I enjoyed each book and maybe why you'd also enjoy it. All right, let's get into it. The first book that I want to talk about is called Catch and Kill by Ronan Farrow. This book was actually recommended to me by my boyfriend, and at first I wasn't super eager to jump into it because it was nonfiction, and like I mentioned earlier, I'm more into fiction, but boy, am I glad that I read this book. Basically, this book is written by Ronan, and at the time he was this investigative journalist slash reporter working for NBC. And in this book, he details start to finish how he researched and then eventually fought to publish this piece, basically exposing Harvey Weinstein for the predator that he was. And he really faced a lot of pushback from NBC, the company he was working for, who didn't want to publish his article because they were honestly afraid of Weinstein and the power that he had in the industry. And as much as the book is about Harvey Weinstein, and Ronan actually refers to him as like the white whale, he does talk about a couple other men that were brought down by the Me Too movement, and just that like slow shifting of the tide where women were feeling empowered to come out and share their story despite facing these huge repercussions. It was honestly disgusting to read about how much went into covering this man's public image, despite the fact that it was like Hollywood's open secret. I mean, they were using NDAs, they were forcing women to be silent, they were threatening their lives, their careers. It was horrible. I learned so much more about this entire situation by reading this book, and you think you know the story, but I promise you, you don't know the whole story until you've read this book. And it really makes you wonder, like, what else is being hidden behind the news scene that we aren't seeing, because NBC fought so hard to kill Ronan's piece. He ended up having to take it to a different publisher. So like, what else are they hiding from us? So I would definitely recommend adding this to your reading list, especially if you're someone who's interested in like crime or spy-related topics. It got so crazy at some points that it actually felt like fiction. So the next book that I want to talk about is called Little Fires Everywhere. And I don't want to give up too much about this book because the plot is just so good. And I actually read this before finding out that it was a show on Hulu that stars Reese Witherspoon. So having read both the book and now watched the TV show, I could say that the show did a pretty good job. I felt like they didn't leave anything out. Of course, they did make it a little more dramatic than the book, but that's to be expected. Basically, the premise of this story is there's this town in the suburbs called Shaker Heights, and it's pretty much perfect. Everything about the town has been planned. None of the students have to cross any roads to get to school. All the houses have to look a certain way from the front. The lawn has to be a certain length, all that kind of stuff. So there's this family in Shaker Heights, they're called the Richardsons, and it is a wife, a husband, and their 4 children. and they really don't have any inconveniences or major problems to speak of. They have these super cushy jobs, a beautiful house, they're financially well taken care of. They even have this rental property that they rent out, but they don't even need the money that comes from it. So the wife rents it out for a super low price every month to families that she thinks needs the help. And it's kind of like her patting herself on the back, like this is her good deed, giving back to someone who's less fortunate than her. Through this rental property is how we're introduced to the next set of main characters, which is this mother-daughter duo. The mom's name is Mia and the daughter is Pearl. Mia and Pearl are basically nomads. They've just been traveling from place to place ever since Pearl was little. Mia is an artist, and so whenever they go to a new place, she creates some artwork, and then when it's done, she sends it off to New York, it gets sold, and then they basically pack up all their belongings and go to another place, so that way Mia can find new inspiration for her next art piece. But this time around, Mia promises her daughter Pearl that they're gonna stay put in Shaker. She wants her daughter to get grounded and have an opportunity to make friends and like have that normal high school experience. So not only do the Richardsons and their children have their own storyline going on, Mia and Pearl have stuff going on, and we follow the plot of all the characters, but the main chunk of the book is about the tension between Mia and Mrs. Richardson. As time goes on, a lot of animosity develops between the two characters, and we also get flashbacks in the book that kind of give us an idea of where each person is coming from, how they got to be the way they are, and why they make the decisions that they make. I'd say some of the main themes in this book are parenting, motherhood. There's a large focus on race, community. I just found this book to be super anticipating. There were a lot of twists and turns and things that I didn't expect in the plot. So I would recommend this book for anyone who is interested in drama. And also if you plan on starting the show on Hulu, I would definitely recommend you start with the book. So the next book that I want to talk about is called Such a Fun Age. And this book had similar themes to Little Fires Everywhere, but there was more of an emphasis on race. And the way that this book is told is from two different characters' perspectives, and every chapter that goes along, it's each person talking. So we get a chance to see two different people's perspective on the same situation. So one of the main characters is this 25-year-old black girl named Amira, and she is a young adult who is working all these multiple part-time jobs, but she isn't really sure what she wants to do as a career. And she's surrounded by her friends who are getting promotions or getting their own places to live or getting engaged. So she kind of feels lost and is looking for what she should be doing. And one of her part-time jobs becomes being this nanny for some other white woman named Alex. So Alex is the other main character that we hear from throughout the book. Alex is like this wealthy blogger, social media person. She doesn't even really need a nanny. She just has one because she wants to focus more on her career. And throughout the book, from Amira's perspective, Alex has this facade up that her whole life is perfect. She has everything that she wants. She's totally happy. But then of course we read Alex's side of the story and we find out she has a ton of insecurities and there are a lot of things that are upsetting her. So the book kicks off with this intense, heated interaction that is based on racial biases, and that comes into play throughout the book. It's brought up a bunch of times and it's how we are introduced to other main characters. And that initial interaction is kind of what grabs the reader's attention and really hooks you in. I just found that reading each character's perspective was really interesting. There were a lot of times where you could see that someone had good intentions, but they still did something that was maybe not the best move. I found this book to be pretty fast-paced. It was a really quick read and it really makes you think. The next book that I want to talk about is Codename Helene. This book was definitely my favorite of the 6 that I talk about today. And I didn't find out until I got to the end of the book and I read the author's note that this was all based on a true story, which kind of amazed me. This book is about an Australian woman, her name is Nancy Wake, and through a series of events, she becomes this spy for the French resistance during World War II in Germany. And it happens shortly after her husband is enlisted into the army. So she's sitting at home and she doesn't really want to sit by and do nothing. She wants to get involved somehow. The book is told through these interweaving timelines. So it starts off with Nancy in a plane in the middle of the night and she's about to be airdropped into Germany during World War II. And so as the book continues, we get all these flashbacks that show us what events led up to this point, and we get to see what things were like pre-war. And as much as the book is about Nancy and like all these dangerous missions she goes on, there is a large part of the story that focuses on her husband Henry and just the development of their love story start to finish. This character, Nancy, who was a real person, she's super fearless, she's really witty, she's strong-minded, and she goes on all these really dangerous missions, and eventually over time she starts to gain the respect and the admiration of all her comrades, who are all male. I found this book to be super suspenseful, and knowing that it was a real person after the fact, it makes the book all that more interesting. So I definitely recommend this for anyone who's interested in like spy or espionage related topics. I would say add this to your reading list because I really enjoyed it. The next book that I want to talk about is The Handmaid's Tale. So I picked up this book because I had heard about the TV show on Hulu, and I had heard really good things, that it was a great show. So I wanted to read the book first. What really surprised me is that the original book came out in 1985, and then the first season of the Hulu show came out in 2017. So there's this really big time gap between the two. And so since I was looking for a new show to start watching, I read the book, and I think I blew through it in like a day or two because I just really wanted to get to the TV show. So if anyone has watched The Handmaid's Tale, you're already familiar with the concept of like, there's this religious extremist society that our main character is living in, and it's her and a bunch of like formerly American women that are basically being held captive and being forced to give birth because there's a fertility crisis going on in the world. Part of these women living in this crazy religious society is that they really can only speak to one another using predetermined religious expressions, like they have to say stuff like praise be or may the Lord open, which I don't even know what that means. So in the book we get a lot of information by reading the main character's thoughts, and in the TV show they try to incorporate that a little by doing voiceovers. But I'd still recommend you read the book first because I think it gives a lot more information. I will say that the TV show surpassed the book within like the first or second episode of season 1, which was pretty surprising. They managed to take one whole book and just squish it into one episode. But that's kind of how the show works. It is super fast paced and there's always something interesting happening. It doesn't really drag out a lot. If you haven't started the show yet, I would definitely recommend you start with the book. I know that they recently released a sequel to The Handmaid's Tale. I think it came out last year, so I'm on hold for that at the library. Probably gonna get it in like 12 weeks, but I'm just really curious to see if the book is gonna follow along with the TV show despite it coming out after the fact. So maybe I'll update you in a few months. The last book that I want to talk about is called Mrs. Everything. This book wasn't originally on my reading list. The way I found it was actually through the Libby app. I just clicked on whatever was available for me to download in the moment, and then I sorted it by highest rating. And this book also had like a really bright, colorful cover, and I seem to be drawn to colorful artwork. I have some mixed feelings about this book. It was definitely entertaining. It kept me engaged throughout the whole time. And it was one of the few books where we get to follow chronologically the life of a character from start to finish. It didn't really skip around a lot. I know some other books will start with like someone who's 10 years old, tell a little bit of story, and then next thing you know, they're in their 50s. Whereas this book follows two main characters. They're sisters, and their names are Bethy and Jo. And basically from the time they're children to the time they die, we're along for the ride. And the way the story is told is with these chapters that go back and forth between each of their perspectives. And so they have their own stories going on and their own issues, but then when there's something that involves both of them, we get to see each of their perspectives on the same situation. So my only criticism about this book is at times it felt a little unrealistic. It touched on a lot of really serious issues that women or girls may face in their lifetime. And by taking all these really depressing, life-altering events and just jamming it into two characters, at times it felt a little made up. So there were times where I just felt a little detached from the characters, knowing that they're entirely fiction. I couldn't really buy into the story. But aside from that, if you're looking for something that will follow the life of someone start to finish, I know me personally, I sometimes get a little bummed when a story cuts off and I want to know what happens to these characters after the book. This definitely fills that craving. And that's it. These were just my top 6 out of the ones that I've read, like I said, since the beginning of the year. They're not my favorite of all time. I figured 6 would be a good number because it equates to about like a book a month if we're at the halfway point in the year right now. So if I decide to do another one of these videos later in December, I could give another 6 books. So I will leave a link in the description if you want to check out my reading list and maybe see what other books I've read or how I rated them. And if anyone has any suggestions for me, please send them my way. I'm always looking for more things to read. So thanks to anyone who decided to watch this video. I hope that this list was helpful. And if anyone decides to read one of these books, please let me know. I would like to know if this was helpful at all or if I'm just talking into the void. If you'd like to subscribe to see more of the videos I put out in the future, feel free to do so. I have a couple video ideas planned that I'm really looking forward to. And other than that, just have a good day and I'll see you around. Bye.